Right everyone, today we're here for my round 13 AFL tips and predictions. It is the week of the big freeze game, so I've got the beanie on, and if you haven't already, get yours as well for a very important cause. It's also the midway point of the season as well, which means we can actually take a look to see after round 12 which person leads the tipping comp. Timestamps right here for you guys that want to skip right into my predictions. Sorry for having this released on the Wednesday, and as well, if you guys haven't already, I uploaded a video on Monday going to a local footy game featuring Dale Thomas. Right there. I don't know why it's done so poorly. I really don't, because I thought you guys would definitely enjoy it. So if you haven't seen it yet, or if you haven't gotten around to it, it'd be greatly appreciated if you could check it out when you can. So I actually did okay. I got a 4 out of 7. It was a pretty tough round to tip, I'm not going to lie. I got a few decent tips right against the grain. Look, as you can see, starting on the Thursday, I got the tip incorrect. Thought the power would get the job done. It looked like it could have been the case up until the last quarter, and then the Blues just, ran away with it with a 36-point win. Pretty happy with this Western Bulldogs tip. I knew that would be a really good chance at winning, and they were. Adelaide, yeah, a bit of a 50-50 one there. I need to start backing Hawthorn more, I reckon. You would have seen in my video that I did actually back in West Coast, but a few outs last minute due to, I think, Waterman, I think it was Kelly as well, made me change to St Kilda last minute, and it was a good decision to do that because they ended up getting the win. The Cats beat the Tigers. Well, on the Sunday, I tipped the Ds, but not only did I tip the Ds, I tipped them to win by a decent amount, and they got smashed by 92. Probably one of the biggest shock results of the entire year. And then Gold Coast beating Essendon. That was a great game and a great tip to get right. So 4 out of 7. I'm not too disappointed with that, actually. It's a decent score for a pretty difficult round. Obviously, with last round, not many people will be wasting their jokers. Crazy Coop and Vital Z1 obviously used them. But King Josh is the footy tipping king. Hashtag Brody, Kaliski tipping, Cisco H, and Zayden White T were the only 5 people to get a perfect round score of 8 or 7, but they get an extra point at 8. So well done to those people. And for total score, it looks like we have Swan Hunter after round 12 in the lead, which means he's won the mid-season prize with a score of 93. Jakey H really close, 91. Max Hogan. I'll have a quick look to see, again, the price. So it's $100. So email and Instagram right up there if you want to contact me, Swan Hunter. You've got to respond by 11th of June 2024 right here to receive the mid-season prize. Otherwise, it'll just go to second place. I think that's how it's going to work. Now, for last week, I needed to get 2 big calls correct from the 7 games, and I actually ended up getting the 2 correct. So we'll start with the first game that I got correct. I said in the Dogs v Collingwood game that the Dogs would win after trailing for longer. Pretty good one to get, honestly, because that definitely ended up happening. And the next one that I got correct, I think this is the only other one I got correct as well. I said that the margin would not go over 18 points in West Coast and St Kilda. So that was the 2 that I got correct. Just want to quickly say, in the Dockers v Freo game, I said that the Ds record 75 or more disposals than Freo. That couldn't have been any further from actually being reality. Like, Fremantle absolutely obliterated Ds in all areas, particularly with the disposal count. And I just was so off with that margin and prediction that it makes me look like an even bigger idiot. It was my worst call I reckon I've done all year. Okay, so because of that, I'll have a look to see which punishment ended up getting the most likes for gut. So the one that got the most likes was from Chris Logan. I've seen him come this quite a bit. It was to go to a petrol station and ask the worker what the year is, and after the response, yell out it worked, all while either wearing old or futuristic clothing. Let's just say I am pretty lucky that I have to avoid that one. That would be just the most awkward thing to film, to be honest, particularly having to wear that futuristic clothing. Where am I going to get that from? That can't be commented again on any of the tipping punishments, so I'm actually pretty happy that I avoid that. But remember, 3 for this week because I spun the wheel. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into my round 13 tips. Alright, so beginning with the tips, we'll start off on the Thursday night, and we've got Adelaide and Richmond at the Adelaide Oval. This is the final Thursday night game, and don't think it'll be great. I hope it is, because for those that aren't already aware, this will be a game I'll be actually attending, because I'll be in Adelaide for the Div 12 Rezzies game, so I'll be going to this game on the Thursday. So I'm hoping we get a good contest. I feel like even with how disappointing the Crows have been, this is just almost like a free win for them in a way, just with how Richmond have been going. And Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval, they're still pretty good. And particularly against the weaker opposition, we still see Adelaide, they're capable of really putting a number on those sort of sides. So I probably expect them to win by 40 plus. And even though they were really disappointing against Hawthorn last week, I really don't know what happened. I mean, I actually brought in Jordan Dawson to my side, thinking that he was going to really lift the Crows. I think he had one of his worst games. A lot of play, like Rich Shelley was also really quiet. A lot of plays in the Adelaide's midfield just didn't get enough of the ball, and they were just second to the footy from longer. And another loss to the MCG for Adelaide. Well, they haven't picked up a result there since that draw against Collingwood in 2017. Richmond, obviously, they're going really poorly, but I feel like they're actually playing some better footy. Really heartbreaking to see Lefau get an ACL injury, because I think he's been a shining light for Richmond. I've actually been enjoying watching him play. Dusty will also be rested as well, because they want him to play his 300th game against the Hawks of the MCG the week after. But I think Richmond might have a few ins, if I'm not mistaken. I think Taranto and Bolton could be in, so that'll help strengthen the lineup just a little bit, but those outs also cancel out in a bit. I think, yeah, Richmond have shown heart the last 2 weeks against the Cats. They were really good in the first half. Against the Bombers, they were really good as well. We could see something similar here from the Tigers. I just think ultimately Adelaide is just going to be too strong, and I'll be surprised if Richmond keep up with the Crows for more than 3 quarters. I'm saying the Crows win this game for 40 points. My big call, the Crows have 33 or more scoring shots. All right, in the next game, on the Friday night, we've got the Western Bulldogs and Brisbane. Now, I just want to say one thing real quick. I won't be watching a second of this game because, as I said before, I'll be in Adelaide for the biggest game of Div 12 Rezzies. So, yeah, that's going to be massive. If you're in Adelaide during this time, I definitely recommend you guys heading down there, obviously with Marmalade. Massive creators are going to be a part of it. A lot of former AFL players as well will be there. And who knows, maybe I'll get a last minute call up to play in the game. Probably not, but regardless, that's why I won't be watching this game. And if you're in Adelaide, definitely head down. A little bit of a plug, but I think it'll be good fun. And hopefully even better than how big it was last year. Now, as for the game's sake, though, this is going to be one of those games where I feel like the Lions definitely could get up if the Dogs just are a bit off. They have one of those off days, but it's just hard for me to have any faith in the Lions at the moment. This is sort of a year I think it's a bit of a rider for them. Just focus now on 2025. Play some of the young kids, see what works, see what works differently. No teams have won the flag from 13th position at the midway point of the year, so I just don't think the Lions have what it takes this season, and I just don't really know why this year they haven't got things rolling. Is it the grand final loss? Are they the injuries? Despite the Dogs maybe weakened forward line, I still think they're going to be a really tough side to beat today. They've been in some really good form, obviously against the Pies last week. Didn't get to watch any of the game, but I just felt like they got better as the game wore on, and they eventually ran over the top of Collingwood. The Dogs still should just do enough, in my opinion. I think they'll still have a high scoring game despite a few outs like Waitman. No Norton still, and obviously no Darcy. And they'll just be, the better side on the day. I'm saying they win the game by 22 points. So I'm a big call, though, that both sides combine for 205 more points. I know the Dogs don't have too many of their big name forwards playing this week, but I still feel like they'll find goals through other areas as well. And Brisbane are also a pretty high scoring team as well. Next up, we've got on the Saturday at Utah Stadium, Hawthorn take on GWS. Hawthorn right now, they're playing finals quality footy. And 5-6 weeks ago, they were playing one of the more unattractive brands of footy in the competition. And I went to quite a few Hawthorn games in a row, and I find it quite boring just watching Hawthorn play. But all of a sudden, they flip the switch, and they're just playing with a lot more run, dare. They've just taken the game on. Sam Mitchell clearly is a coach that knows what he's doing, and their form has been really good now. 5 wins in the last 6. I think one of those losses did actually include that Port game, which probably should have been a win. So who knows with the Hawks? I mean, obviously they've got a pretty poor percentage, but despite that, they could still believe that maybe they could still play finals. I mean, they're proving in the competition that they're competing with the best. Last week, they took on the Crows. I thought it was going to be a close game of footy, a much closer game than we ended up seeing. But Hawthorn, I think they got out to like a 45-plus point lead at one stage. I was watching bits and pieces. Dylan Moore, kick 5. How good was he? Will Day, Ginnivan, they were great. And it was awesome to see like the players on the field. They expressed themselves. Or last week with Jath and Ginnivan, this week with Ginnivan. And I think Will Day got involved as well. So it was just good to see. They've got a great culture going on inside the club at the moment with the Hawks. The Giants as well, they're back from the bye. They're, in a bit of a weird form slump, but they got a good win against the Cats to bounce back. Honestly, not too sure if they're going to do enough to stop the red-hot Hawks in Tassie as well. Because in Tassie, remember, the Hawks are a different threat in Tassie. They're a really dangerous side. They've only played the Saints so far this year, but they're technically a perfect record this year in Tassie. And I actually think I need to start having a bit more faith by backing the Hawks more. It is a bit of an upset, but I really see it happening. I really see it almost not being an upset with how Hawthorn are going. So I'm going to say the Hawks get up by 9 points, with Ginnivan and Moore combining for 6 or more goals as my big call. Next up, we have on the 4:35 PM time slot at Optus Stadium, West Coast and North Melbourne. Now, I feel like this could be North Melbourne's chance of picking up their first win, almost their best chance, especially with Harley Reid now being out for a couple of weeks due to that suspension on Darcy Wilson. But I feel like, again, though, if North don't win this game, they still have a couple of games around 21 and around 22, I believe, against the Tigers and against West Coast again, but at Blundstone. Now, the Eagles on the weekend absolutely dominated the Saints in the first half. I felt like they were just the stronger stronger side. And the reason why the Eagles in the first half was so strong was because of Harley Reid. Blake's played 10 games. He had all those clearances, 17 disposals. We couldn't stick a tackle on him, which was really frustrating as a fan. So they brought Windy on to tag him in the second half, and that changed the game. I think he only had like 3 or 4 disposals, gave away free kicks like 3 or 4 times as well. And pretty much after that, the Saints got on top, and yeah, they ended up winning by 14 thanks to a pretty strong last quarter. Now, North, obviously, they're 0-11. They had the bye, so they had their best week last week because they didn't get to see a loss. The week before, they got done by, 10 goals against the Power. I think this is a chance for them to, if they don't win, at least be competitive enough to not get smashed or blown out of the water, because I just don't think West Coast will do that with no Reid. They are going to have Waterman back, and I think they might have Kelly back as well, so yeah, I still think ultimately at Optus Stadium, West Coast, they'll be the stronger side. And even if they played pretty much the same way they played against the Saints last week, St Kilda are a much better side than North Melbourne still, so I'd still think that a 5-goal win's probably going to happen. West Coast away isn't easy. I'm going to say West Coast win the game by 26 points, but my big call is that North Melbourne, for the first time this year, do not concede 100 or more points. And the final game on the Saturday, we have my Saints taking on Gold Coast at Marvel Stadium. And I actually genuinely reckon this is a chance of being one of the better games of the round. It might not be a high-scoring game, considering it's a Saints one, but I think this is going to be a really close one and a really entertaining battle. Finally, good to see the Saints get back on the winners list after an unconvincing start against West Coast, it has to be said. I thought the Saints, they had plenty of opportunities, especially in that first quarter and, the last at the start as well, to, really put on some scoreboard pressure. But St Kilda's ball use inside 50 is still a bit of a question. It's like when they're actually looking for targets, they're such a different side, but when they're just blasting inside 50, West Coast defence just took that many uncontested marks. It was really disappointing to see. Smart from Ross Lyon to reduce Reid's impact that he had in the first half. And in that second half, we just got on top in a lot of the areas of the ground. Running was just too much for West Coast. Mason Wood kicked 3 in the last quarter. Mason was awesome. He kicked 4 for the game. And that strong last quarter will actually give me a bit of hope ahead of this game against the Suns. I know it was against West Coast away, but West Coast away aren't that bad. Like, they're actually hard to beat. So I thought it was a pretty decent win for the Saints. The Suns also had a pretty good win on the weekend against the Bombers. Probably one of their best wins, people are saying, in their history, just because it's a sort of game that you'd expect the Suns to let drop because of all the pressure against a top Bombers side, when the crowd was mainly Bombers, despite it being at Heritage Bank. But again, though, Gold Coast has just been really good down there. They haven't lost a game yet at home. King and Long combined for 8. And they just look quicker and stronger, and they were just more clutch in the final minutes of the game. They have yet to win away, though, the Suns this year, and also against St Kilda. Their last win against the Saints at Marvel was in 2014, I believe. All of these stats are making me lean towards the Saints a little bit more. I think the Saints aren't as terrible as people are making them out to be. We just need a bit of form to go our way, and maybe that last quarter against the Eagles can kickstart something. But yeah, against Gold Coast, we're just very good there at Marvel, and I think it's going to be a game where the Suns, they'll make it tough, but I'm going to say the Saints will be stronger for longer in one of the games of the year. Not just one of the games of the round, in one of the games of the year, something will happen, and the Saints will finally get a close win. I'm going to say the Saints by 1 point, and my big call, the margin will be kept under 18 points for the entire game. I believe this is the first time tipping St Kilda in a tipping video since the Hawthorn game, which is quite alarming. Alright, next up we've got Sydney taking on Geelong. I will be live for this game, and it'll also be live involving quite a few Cats fans that'll be at my place, so if the Cats get smashed, which I think it could happen, it'll make for a more entertaining game and stream. It's a danger game for it to be a big blowout, because I don't think they look very good against the Tigers, and the Tigers are one of the weaker sides in the competition with all the outs they have right now. And at GMHBA, they're just not looking promising. I mean, against Richmond, I think the margin was 30 points Richmond's way at one stage in the first half. You could sort of tell the Cats are always going to come back, and with Richmond as well, they weren't going to maintain that, high intensity pressure footy and their ability to take the game on through the corridor, which they were able to do in that first half. The Cats obviously ended up winning by 5 goals it was, but it wasn't the most convincing win, I didn't think. The thing is, though, the quality of opposition is going to, go up that many more levels. They're playing a Sydney side who had the bye last week, but they still are outright first on the ladder by 2 games just about, and they're flying. And with how much stronger I believe the Swans midfield is, they do have the potential to obliterate the Cats mids. I wouldn't be surprised if this could be a similar sort of margin to the Suns one, if the Cats drop their heads and they aren't careful. But I hope for Geelong's sake and for the game's sake, they can make it competitive, because they were so strong in the first 7 rounds of footy. They play a little bit more like the way they've been playing then. I think Danger's back as well this week, so, that could help them a little bit more. But I still just feel for the Swans this year, they're the best side in the competition by quite some bit still, and I think they're going to make it too tough for the Cats to really go close with them for most of the game. And I'm saying that the Swans win it by 44 points with them winning in every single quarter as my big call. Alrighty, next up we got on the Sunday night, the King's Birthday Eve clash, Essendon and Carlton. The biggest King's Birthday Eve clash I can remember, and probably the biggest Essendon Carlton clash that I can remember in my entire life. At least for the home and away season, because of where the two sides are situated. They're both playing some great footy. Essendon second, Carlton fifth. And because of how well both these sides are going, unlike last year, it was almost impossible to get a ticket. You know, it was sold out very quickly. Couldn't get a ticket for this game, so it'll be a second stream for the Sunday. Now, I did stream the Gold Coast Essendon game last week, and I didn't think the Bombers were bad against the Suns. I thought they were definitely a chance of winning it for really all the game. They started like a house on fire, but ultimately I thought for Essendon, accuracy was a bit of an issue. Look, it was anyone's game basically for the entirety until like the last couple of minutes where Laverty gave away a 50-metre penalty. Obviously, it was a dodgy call. Did it cost them a game? Maybe, but I felt like the umpiring definitely favoured Essendon for most of the game regardless, but, you know, they were still pretty good. They just weren't clutch enough late, and Gold Coast, I thought, were the better side anyway, so they deserved the win. But the Blues, though, they were certainly clutch in the last, with a massive 8-goal last quarter. It was a arm wrestle for the first 3 quarters with all the lead changes. I didn't really know who was going to win. I was still in belief that the Power would win up until 3-quarter time, given it was at home and all that. You know, high pressure for most of the game. That last quarter, their conversion rate was incredible. And I think they kicked 4 goals from 4 entries to begin that quarter. They kicked 8. And it was against Port at the Adelaide Oval, which is certainly no walk in the park, although right now, maybe it is. Carlton are the better side, but Essendon is second. And I think with them being second, home game, massive occasion, probably 90k plus in the house, I think they're going to just pinch it. I think they have one of those games where they just play out of their skin, really want to beat one of their arch rivals. And Carlton probably don't quite expect Essendon to be as good as they are in this game. And I'm going to say the crowd, the home crowd, lifts to the occasion. And Essendon win by 17 points in a bit of an upset call. My big call, though, is that there will be a crowd of more than 90,000 at this game. All right, the last game of the round, of course, on the King's Birthday, Collingwood and Melbourne. Luckily, I think I got a ticket for this game as well. I went last year. It was pretty decent. Even though it was close, it wasn't as good as I thought, but I think this will be a better game of footy in my opinion. And unbelievably, both of these sides aren't even in the 8. Let's just say 3 or 4 weeks ago, you certainly wouldn't have imagined that being the case, but with how sort of the form's gone on, I feel like with Collingwood, they're not going as badly as what their ladder position suggests. They're still 3rd favourites, I think, in the premiership, or 4th favourites in the odds, and that was their first loss since round 2. Obviously with a couple of draws fit in there. I don't think they were disgraced against the Dogs. It was sort of an expected loss personally for mine because they were favourites, the Dogs, and the Dogs just ran over the top of them that last quarter. So they just didn't have the legs, the young legs, I guess, in the Pies. They've got a large injury list, as we all know. Hosking Elliott might be the only player coming back for them this week. And then for Melbourne, I think they dropped 6 ladder positions that round. They were 5th or 4th at the start of the round. They're now 10th. They dropped over 10%. They were absolutely disgraced. After that start, they kicked the first 2 goals. It was all Freo. And I just couldn't believe my eyes with how big of a smashing it was. Like in all areas, it was Simon Goodwin's most embarrassing defeat. But I think margin-wise, remember earlier I said that the D's would win the disposal count by 70 plus. The Dockers won it by 70 plus. They won every stat basically, the Dockers. It was an embarrassing loss for Melbourne. It's one of those losses that makes you honestly question the legitimacy and makes you lose a lot of respect for their team because they were just that shit that it wasn't even funny. And I think the Pies, despite all this, are a better team anyway. So normally sides that do get battered like that tend to respond the next week. But also the Pies lost as well. So 2 sides here that want to win after losses on the weekend. But I think Collingwood are the better team. And I just don't even know what to say for Melbourne right now. They could win, but I'm just more faithful in the Pies. So we're going to back them in by 12 points. And I'll say that the D's failed to kick 10 or more goals. So quick rundown, we've got Adelaide by 40, Western Bulldogs, Hawthorn, West Coast, St Kilda, Sydney, Essendon and Collingwood. Every single team that I selected this week are the home teams. That's probably the first time I've ever done that. Comment down below your tips as well. Freo and Port have the buys. On Thursday I'll be uploading my mid-season ladder predictions. And on Friday I might be uploading an updated version of my favourite and least favourite sides in 2024. Thanks for watching. Check out the Dale Thomas vlog down below, link in the description. And we'll see you soon tomorrow for my mid-season ladder predictions.